Harlan Dre shoved a warm biscuit toward the girl's trembling hands. She flinched like he'd thrown a stone, not food, and kept her palms tucked under her ragged sleeves. "Eat," he said, voice low, the kind that made men listen without asking why. Her eyes gray and too sharp for someone half-starved flicked to his face, then to the plate. "Before we jump back in, tell us where you're from. If this story moves you, please subscribe. Tomorrow, I have a special story for you." Harlan watched the decision happen in her throat. Pride and hunger argued, and hunger won by an inch. She reached out with 2 fingers, like touching heat might burn her, and pulled the biscuit to her. She didn't bite right away. She held it close, breathing in as if the smell alone could steady her. He didn't move. He stood with both hands braced on the table, knuckles pale, giving her the room to choose. That mattered to him, always had. If she ate because she wanted to, not because she was cornered, then what he was doing stayed on the right side of the line. The line, in his experience, was the only thing separating a man from the kind of story people whispered about him. The girl finally took a bite. Not dainty, not polite. A sharp, desperate bite that tore the bread and pulled a sound out of her like she'd been holding it back for days. Harlan's chest tightened, quick and ugly. He'd seen hungry calves, seen men come home from war with eyes like dry wells. But a kid eating in silence, making herself smaller, so nobody could accuse her of taking too much hit different. He slid the plate of beans closer. There's stew, too. Coffee's bitter. Water's clean. She didn't answer. She tore off another bite, chewed fast, then slowed like she remembered chewing could be a luxury. Harlan turned his head toward the stove, not to ignore her, but to keep his gaze from turning into pressure. The pot on the iron range ticked softly, simmering, the smell of onions and salt pork rising in warm waves. His kitchen was plain. Pine table, 2 chairs, 1 cracked mug he kept meaning to replace, and a knife rack that never sat empty. Out beyond the window, the ranch sprawled in darkness. No lanterns outside. He didn't like to advertise his life. He'd found her in the yard an hour earlier, crouched by the water trough like a stray dog that had learned the world kicked first and questioned later. Most men would have run her off. Some would have laughed. Harlan Dre did neither. He had a rule. You didn't send away a person who looked like she might not make it to morning. That rule had been forged long before he owned the Dre spread, back when he had nothing but dust in his teeth and a promise he couldn't keep. He set a bowl of stew in front of her and finally sat down opposite, the chair groaning under his weight. He kept his forearms on the table open, visible, no sudden moves. The girl glanced at his hands. A quick check. She took in calluses, old scars, the faint white notch where a ring used to sit before he'd stopped wearing it. "Name," he said gently this time. The word still came out rough. She swallowed, eyes on the bowl. "Lenora." A pause. She added, like she couldn't help the truth. "Lenora Quill." Harlan didn't react on his face. Inside, something shifted. Quill. Not a name you heard in these parts, unless you were trying to remember a debt. He took a slow breath through his nose and asked the safest thing he could think of. "You got folks?" Lenora's spoon hovered. The stew steamed, but her hands shook as if the heat didn't reach her. No, the lie was thin enough to see daylight through it. Harlan nodded anyway, not because he believed her, but because he wasn't about to pry a girl open like a locked box. He'd been a locked box once. He'd survived because nobody forced the lid. "Where'd you come from?" She took a mouthful, eyes dropping to the table's grain. "Downriver, mostly. Mostly isn't a place. It's what happens when you don't stay long enough to be counted." Harlan's jaw tightened. He remembered being counted by the wrong people, remembered how quickly the count could turn into a rope. He let the silence sit between them, warm as the stew. Lenora ate again, this time slower. Like she'd decided this might be real, and she didn't want to wake up from it too quick. Harlan studied her without staring. She was small but not weak, bones sharp beneath her coat, hair dark and hacked short like she'd cut it herself with a dull blade. There was a bruise on her cheekbone, yellowing at the edges, and a cut at the corner of her mouth that had reopened when she bit the biscuit too hard. His hands curled under the table. "Who did that?" he asked. Lenora's spoon clinked against the bowl. Her throat moved. She didn't answer. Harlan waited. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't lean in. He let the question be an offering, not a demand. Finally, she said, "Life." He exhaled, half a laugh without humor. "Life's got a lot of fists." She met his eyes, and for the first time she looked older than her years. "So do men." The words landed like a nail. Harlan's reputation in town was built on fear. Men said he was a storm with boots on. They said he'd broken a man's jaw for cheating at cards. They said he'd run off 3 rustlers alone, that he kept bodies buried under his north fence. None of those stories were true, but Harlan had never corrected them. Fear kept trouble away. Fear kept him alive. And fear was the very thing Lenora's eyes carried when she looked at him, careful, measured, ready. He wanted to tear that fear out of the room and throw it into the fire. Instead, he said, "Nobody's touching you here." She stared at him like she was trying to decide if he understood what that promise cost. "I didn't ask for here," she said. "I know. A beat." "Why?" she asked. It was a simple word. It felt like a blade. Harlan looked down at his own bowl. He hadn't eaten yet. He wasn't hungry anymore. "Because you were at my trough," he said, as if that explained anything. Lenora's lips pressed together. Lots of people got troughs. Not all of them belonged to a man with a lock and a loaded temper. She flinched at the word loaded. Harlan softened his voice. "I don't want you afraid of me." "Then don't be you." The honesty surprised him. A small, fierce thing. He could have smiled. He didn't. "I can't," he said. "But I can be careful." Her gaze dropped to his knife rack again, then to his hands. He pushed his bowl away untouched and stood. The chair scraped. Lenora stiffened. He raised one palm. "I'm going to get you a blanket. There's a cot in the washroom off the kitchen. You can lock it from the inside." She blinked, confusion threading through the fear. "Lock it?" "Yes. No one does that," she said, almost accusing. Harlan's throat tightened. Someone should have. He moved slowly to the back room, pulled down a thick wool blanket and an extra shirt. He set them on the table, not close enough to crowd her. "Washroom's there," he said, pointing with 2 fingers. "Basin, soap. You can wash. You can sleep. In the morning, we'll talk." "Talk about what?" "About where you're going next." Lenora's chin lifted. "I'm not staying." Harlan nodded as if she'd said the sky was up. "That's fine." Her eyes narrowed. "It is?" "It's your life," he said. "I'm not collecting you." That word collecting made her shoulders loosen by a fraction. Like she'd heard men talk about people as property before, and couldn't he help bracing for it? Harlan's stomach turned. He'd grown up around that kind of talk. He'd sworn he'd die before he ever spoke it. Lenora ate the last of the stew without looking up again. When she finished, she wiped the bowl clean with the biscuit, leaving nothing wasted, then set the bowl down gently, as if manners could protect her. She stood. The blanket looked heavy in her arms. Harlan stayed near the stove, giving her space to walk past. At the washroom door, she paused. "Mr. Dre," she said. He stiffened at the honorific. Nobody called him that, unless they wanted something. "Yes, I'll pay you back." He almost told her not to be foolish. Almost told her debt was a chain. Instead, he said, "Eat first. Then we'll talk about paying." She held his gaze a moment longer than a stray should. There was a flash in her eyes, something like insult, something like hope. Then she disappeared into the washroom. The latch clicked. Harlan didn't move for a long time. He listened. Water splashed softly. A breath. A quiet, stifled sound that wasn't a laugh and wasn't a sob, but came from the same place. He stared at the pot on the stove, at the steam curling up like a ghost trying to leave. He told himself it was just a girl getting warm. He told himself he'd done his part. But the name Quill kept tapping at the back of his skull. And the way she'd looked at his knife rack, like she'd known exactly how men used tools, made his hands itch. He walked to the window and peered out into the yard. His foreman, Ames, had gone to town that afternoon for supplies. The hands were in the bunkhouse on the far side of the yard. Harlan kept his main house separate, not out of pride, but out of habit. A man who'd survived the kind of life Harlan survived didn't like being surrounded in his sleep. He heard footsteps in the washroom, slow, cautious. Then the latch clicked again. Lenora stepped back into the kitchen, wearing his extra shirt, sleeves rolled up. The shirt hung loose, swallowing her frame. Her hair was damp. She'd washed her face. The bruise looked more honest, without dirt to hide it. She kept the blanket wrapped around her shoulders like armor. "I'll sleep," she said, voice guarded. "You should," she hesitated. You don't have to watch the door." Harlan almost laughed. "I'm not watching anything. Men who say that are watching." He looked at her, let her see the truth on his face. "I'll be in my room. Door stays open on the kitchen side. You can hear me. If you want it closed, tell me." Lenora swallowed. The small give in her posture returned. She went to the washroom cot without another word. Harlan waited until he heard the cot creak, until he heard her shifting under the blanket. Then he took his boots off by the stove and sat down at the table again, alone. The kitchen felt different with her in it. It felt like the ranch had acquired a heartbeat. He stared at the cold bowl of stew he hadn't touched. In the silence, old instincts rose sharp, cruel, efficient. If she was trouble, sending her away in the morning would be simplest. If she had enemies, keeping her could bring them to his land. If she was lying about having no folks, somebody might be hunting her. Harlan Dray knew what it was to be hunted. He also knew what it did to a person, to live with their shoulders tight every second, waiting for the world to grab them. He pushed the bowl aside and stood. He checked the latches on the windows. He checked the bolt on the pantry, where he kept the flour. He checked the back room where his rifle rested in its rack. He did not touch the rifle. He returned to his own room and lay on top of the quilt fully dressed, staring at the ceiling. Sleep came in small, thin pieces. In the middle of the night, a sound pulled him awake. Not a scream, a cough. A tight, choking cough like lungs trying to remember how to be full. Harlan rolled out of bed and crossed the hall, moving quietly. The washroom door was shut. He stopped there, listening. Lenora coughed again, then silence. He could have opened the door. He could have asked if she needed water. He didn't. He'd promised her a lock for a reason. Instead, he filled a mug from the kettle, set it outside the door, and spoke softly through the wood. "Water's here." No need to answer. He walked away before she could. Back in his room, he sat on the edge of the bed and stared at his hands. He'd fed a girl. He'd given her a lock. He'd done what any decent man should. So why did it feel like he'd stepped onto a trail that didn't have a safe end? Morning arrived with a gray light pressing into the windows. Harlan rose early, habit stiff in his bones, and put coffee on. He sliced salt pork, set it in the pan, and listened for movement. Nothing. He tried not to worry. Worry was a kind of pride, thinking you could control the world if you just paid enough attention. Still, he found himself glancing at the washroom door every few minutes. Finally, the latch clicked. Lenora stepped out, hair still damp at the ends, blanket folded tight in her arms. Her eyes were clearer than they'd been the night before. Hunger hadn't hollowed them out quite so much. She paused at the sight of the bacon, the coffee, the biscuits rising in the oven. "You're doing it again." she said. Eating? Making it easy. Harlan poured coffee into a mug and set it on the table. Nothing about your life sounds easy. She didn't sit. What do you want? There it was. The question behind every kindness in a harsh world. Harlan kept his hands visible as he set another mug down, then sat. I want you to eat. That's not what I mean. He looked at her steadily. I want you not dead. Her mouth tightened as if she didn't trust softness. Why? He stared at the steam rising from the coffee. Because I've been too close to that line. She waited. He added, quieter, and because you were brave enough to ask for water from the trough that belongs to me. Lenora's gaze flicked up. I didn't ask. You were there, he corrected. That's asking in this world. She set the blanket on the chair, finally lowering herself into the seat opposite him. It was a cautious sit ready to spring. He slid the plate of bacon toward her. She took a piece, hesitated, then ate. Her eyes closed for a brief second. Relief crossed her face like a shadow of something sacred. Harlan's chest tightened again. He hated the world for making food feel like mercy. When she swallowed, she said, If you're trying to buy my gratitude, you're wasting your bacon. I'm not buying anything. Men always are. Harlan's jaw flexed. Not here. Lenora's gaze held his. You keep saying that. Because it's true. She looked down at her hands. Beneath the grime he'd washed away, there were faint marks, thin lines along her wrists, like rope had once rested there. Not fresh. Not old enough to be forgotten. Harlan's fingers curled around his mug so hard the tin creaked. What happened to you? He asked, voice rough. Lenora ate another bite of bacon, chewed slowly, buying time. Then, like a door unlatching inside her, she said, I ran. From who? She swallowed. From a place that calls itself a home. Harlan's eyes stayed on her face. A home doesn't leave marks. Lenora's nostrils flared. Anger rose in her, quick as a match. I didn't come here to tell you my whole story, she snapped. Harlan didn't flinch. He'd been shouted at by men twice her size. I'm not asking for the whole, he said. Just enough so I don't accidentally hand you back to it. That stopped her. Her gaze flicked to the window, then back to him. You won't, she said. I won't if I know what I'm standing against. Lenora's fingers tightened on the bacon. You like standing against things? Harlan's mouth twitched, not quite a smile. It's what people pay me to do. That's not why they fear you? The words landed quietly. Harlan set his mug down. What do they say? Lenora shrugged one shoulder. That you're a man who doesn't lose. That's a lie, is it? Harlan's throat tightened. He didn't answer. Lenora watched him in the silence, then looked away, like she'd learned not to look too long at the dangerous parts of people. After a moment, she said, I don't belong in town. Why? Because I don't have anything to show. She tapped the table with one finger. No family, no papers, no money, no. Reason. Harlan's chest ached at the word reason. You don't need papers to be a person, he said. Lenora gave him a look that said he never stood in front of a counter where a man in a clean vest decided if you existed. Harlan knew that look well. I need work, she said. That's the reason. He studied her. You can work here. Lenora froze. He went on, careful. Not because I own you. Not because you owe me. Because there's chores. Cook can't keep up, and I don't keep women around because hands get ideas. But you're not here for that. Her eyes narrowed. What am I here for then? You're here because you're hungry. She sat back, suspicion wrapping around her again. And if I say no? Then you eat breakfast and leave with a sack of food, and that's the end of it. Lenora stared at him like she was searching for the hook. Harlan let her search. After a long moment, she said, Why would you want me here? Harlan's answer came before he could soften it. Because you're going to go back out there, and someone will decide you're easy. Lenora's eyes flashed. I'm not easy. I know. His voice turned hard. That doesn't stop them. A silence bloomed. Lenora's throat moved. She stared at the bacon as if it had suddenly become heavy. Harlan didn't reach for her. He didn't try to comfort. Comfort could feel like ownership. Instead, he said, if you stay, you sleep behind a locked door. If you work, you get paid. If you leave on your feet. Lenora's jaw clenched. You think money makes me safe? No, Harlan said honestly. I think choices do. She looked up sharply. You're offering me choices? I'm offering you a place to make them. Lenora's fingers tightened on the edge of the table. She stared at him long enough that Harlan felt exposed in a way he didn't like. What's wrong with you? She asked suddenly. Harlan blinked. Wrong? A man like you. You don't do this. Maybe I'm tired, he said, and meant it. Lenora's gaze softened for a flicker, then hardened again. She seemed angry at herself for softening. I'm not a stray dog, she said. I know. Then don't treat me like one. Harlan nodded once. Tell me what you want. Lenora's lips parted and closed again. Want was a dangerous word. She stared at the window, at the pale light, then said quietly, I want to not be chased. Harlan's chest tightened. Are you? He asked. Lenora's eyes slid to his, and there it was again, too sharp, too aware. Yes, she whispered. The words settled into the kitchen like smoke. Harlan held himself still. By who? Lenora's gaze dropped to her hands. I don't know all their names. Stark with one? She swallowed. Sheriff Callahan. Harlan's spine went rigid. Callahan, a lawman in town. A man with a pleasant smile and eyes that never warmed. Harlan's mind moved fast, mapping danger like fencing posts. Why is the sheriff chasing you? He asked. Lenora's voice shook, but her eyes did not. Because I saw something. Harlan's jaw clenched. What? Lenora's fingers twisted together. He told me if I said a word, he'd make sure no one ever found my body. Harlan's hands curled under the table. He hated that he believed her immediately. He hated that the world made it easy to believe. He kept his voice even. Lenora, look at me. She hesitated, then lifted her eyes. Here's what we're going to do, Harlan said. You're going to stay calm. You're going to finish breakfast. And you're going to tell me exactly what you saw. Lenora shook her head once, quick. No. Harlan's eyebrows rose. You asked, she said. I answered. That's all I'm giving. Harlan felt frustration flare, then forced it down. Why not? Because I don't know you. That's fair. And because if I tell you, then you're in it. Harlan's mouth went hard. I'm already in it, Lenora. You walked into my yard. If a lawman's hunting you, he'll come here eventually. Lenora's eyes widened. Harlan watched the realization hit her guilt, fear, the instinct to run and leave him safe. He leaned forward, not to intimidate, but to make sure she heard the truth. You don't owe me safety. You don't owe me silence. If you're in trouble, you're in trouble. We deal with what is, not what we wish. Lenora's throat moved. You don't even know me. I know you're hungry, Harlan said. I know you're brave. And I know you're being hunted by a man who wears a badge. That's enough. A tremor ran through her, small but real. Harlan stood, paced to the counter, and grabbed a paper sack. He filled it with biscuits, wrapped bacon in a cloth, added dried apples. He set it on the table. Lenora blinked. What's that? Choice, Harlan said. If you want to leave right now, you take that and you go. If you want to stay, you leave it. Lenora stared at the sack as if it were a trap. Harlan sat back down and waited. The kitchen hummed with the quiet of a working ranch waking up. Lenora's fingers hovered over the sack. She didn't touch it. Slowly, she pushed the sack away. Harlan exhaled, a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Lenora's voice came out tight. I'll stay. For now. Harlan nodded once, Good. I didn't say I trust you, she snapped, reflexive. I didn't ask you to. A pause. What now? She asked. Harlan's mind moved through steps like he was sorting cattle. First, keep her seen by decent eyes. Isolation helped predators. Second, keep her away from town until he knew what Callahan wanted. Third, find out what she'd witnessed without forcing it. Fourth, make sure his own hands didn't ruin everything. He said, "Now I introduce you to my foreman. If you're going to work, you need to know the boundaries." Lenora's chin lifted. "I can set my own." Harlan's mouth twitched. "Good. You'll fit right in." He stood and motioned for her to follow. Lenora hesitated at the threshold of the kitchen, eyes scanning like she expected a man waiting in the hall. Harlan didn't rush her. When she stepped out, he matched her pace. They crossed the main room. The house was plain 2 rooms, a small loft, and the washroom. Clean, but not polished. No family photographs. No lace curtains. Nothing that suggested softness. Lenora's gaze lingered on the empty walls. "Why's it so bare?" she asked. Harlan's throat tightened. "Because everything with a name can be taken?" Lenora didn't answer, but her eyes softened for a breath. They stepped into the yard. The ranch was alive with morning labor hands moving to saddles, horses blowing steam, buckets clanking, a dog trotting between boots. Harlan's presence changed the air. Men straightened without being told. Voices lowered. Lenora noticed. She moved closer to Harlan without thinking. He felt it, the way she used him like a wall. It should have made him feel powerful. It made him feel responsible. Ames, his foreman, was crossing the yard when he spotted Harlan. Ames was lean, older than Harlan by a decade, with a face that had learned to read trouble by the shape of a man's shoulders. Ames stopped short when he saw Lenora. His eyes flicked to Harlan's. Harlan gave the smallest nod. Ames didn't question it. Not out loud. "Boss," Ames said. "Ames," Harlan replied. "This is Lenora. She's helping in the kitchen and laundry. Maybe mending. You'll pay her from the ranch funds." Fair wage. Ames's eyebrows rose. Lenora's chin lifted. "I can work with horses, too." Ames looked her over. Not rude, just practical. "You can?" "I've slept in stables," she said flatly. "Horses don't mind if you're poor." Ames's mouth twitched, faint amusement. Then his eyes sharpened. "They mind if you're careless." "I'm not," she said. Harlan watched the exchange. Lenora had that stubborn spark. It would keep her alive. It could also set fire to her. Ames glanced at Harlan. "You want her in the bunkhouse?" Harlan's answer was immediate. "No." Lenora stiffened. "I don't want to be near your bed either." Ames barked a short laugh, then cut it off when Harlan's gaze turned. Harlan kept his voice steady. "She stays in the washroom. Locked door. No one bothers her." Ames's face sobered. He understood then this wasn't about propriety. It was about protection. "Understood," Ames said. Lenora's jaw clenched. "I can protect myself." "I believe you," Ames said. "But ranch hands can be fools. And fools get bold when they think no one's watching." Lenora's eyes flashed at the honesty. Harlan said, "You've got chores today. If you want to earn your keep, start with the linens. Then see Mrs. Polk in the cookhouse by noon." Lenora's eyebrows drew together. "Mrs. Polk?" "My cook," Harlan said. "I thought you said you didn't keep women around." "I don't keep them around the main house," Harlan corrected. "Mrs. Polk runs the cookhouse for the hands. She's been here 15 years. She's nobody's fool." Lenora's shoulders loosened a fraction. Harlan added, "If anyone gives you trouble, you go to Ames. If Ames isn't near, you come to me." Lenora's eyes narrowed. "And if you're the trouble?" Harlan's mouth went hard. He respected the question. "Then you leave," he said simply. "And you don't look back." Lenora stared at him like she hadn't expected him to give her that clean an exit. Finally she nodded once. Harlan watched her walk toward the cookhouse, blanket tight around her shoulders. She moved like someone used to slipping through danger, quick, quiet, alert. Ames lingered beside Harlan. "You planning to tell me why there's a stray in your kitchen?" Ames asked under his breath. Harlan's gaze stayed on Lenora's back. "She's not a stray." Ames snorted softly. "All right. A visitor, then." Harlan's jaw clenched. "Callahan's involved." Ames's face hardened instantly. "The sheriff?" Harlan nodded once. Ames's eyes flicked toward the road that led to town. "That badge been sniffing around your land?" "Not yet." "Yet," Ames echoed. Harlan's throat tightened. "She says she saw something." Ames's expression turned grim. "And now she's here." "Yes." Ames looked at Harlan with something like warning. "You know how folks talk." "I know," Harlan said. "And you know Callahan don't like people who don't bow." Harlan's gaze sharpened. "I don't bow." Ames's mouth twisted. "That's why he'll come." Harlan exhaled slowly. "We'll be ready." Ames hesitated, then said quietly, "Boss, why are you doing this?" Harlan's chest tightened. He could have said, because it was right. He could have said, because he was tired of being feared for things he hadn't done. He could have said because a girl with bruises shouldn't be chased by a lawman. Instead, he said the truest thing he could. Because she ate like someone who's been forgotten. Ames's face softened for a brief second, then he nodded. "All right." He started to walk away, then paused. "You want me to put 2 men on the north fence?" Harlan thought of the stories people told about him. Bodies under the fence. A man who didn't lose. He said, "Put eyes on the road. Quiet." Ames nodded once and left. Harlan stood alone in the yard, listening to the ranch breathe. He told himself this was simple. Feed her, pay her, let her go when she was ready. But simple things didn't make his hands shake. He went to the barn to check the horses, to give his mind something honest to do. Inside, the smell of hay and leather wrapped around him. The horses shifted in their stalls, ears flicking. He ran a hand along the neck of his gelding, Hawthorne. The horse leaned into the touch, steady and solid. Harlan wished people were that simple. Footsteps sounded behind him. He turned, expecting a ranch hand. It was Lenora. She stood at the barn entrance, blanket gone, sleeves rolled up again. She held a bundle of linens under one arm. "What are you doing here?" Harlan asked. Lenora lifted her chin. "You said laundry." "I'm hanging them to dry where the wind." She stopped herself, eyes narrowing. "Where the air moves." Harlan's mouth twitched. He'd told her no weather talk in his house without meaning to. He liked facts. He liked the world to stay honest. Lenora stepped into the barn, her gaze moving across the stalls. "You said I could work with horses," she said. "I said you could claim you can," Harlan corrected. Lenora's eyes flashed. "I can." Harlan studied her a long moment. "All right. Show me." Lenora moved toward Hawthorne without hesitation. She didn't go straight to his face. She approached at an angle, soft in her steps, hand low and open. Harlan watched, impressed despite himself. Hawthorne sniffed her fingers. Lenora murmured something under her breath, nonsense words, soothing. Then she ran her palm along the horse's neck, slow. Hawthorne didn't startle. Lenora looked at Harlan, as if daring him to argue. "You learned that where?" Harlan asked. Lenora's jaw clenched. "In the only places that let me stay?" Harlan's chest tightened. "You want to brush him?" he asked. Lenora nodded. Harlan handed her the brush. She worked with steady strokes, careful not to tug. Her shoulders loosened as she did it, as if the rhythm pulled her out of the world's teeth. Harlan leaned against the stall door, watching her. It was strange, seeing softness in someone who carried so much sharpness. "You like horses," he said. Lenora's mouth tightened. "They don't ask you to explain yourself." Harlan felt that. He said, "Neither do I." Lenora's brush slowed. She glanced at him. You do? You asked me what I saw. Harlan nodded. I did, because I'm not pretending the world's kind. Lenora's eyes dropped to the horse's coat. The world isn't kind. No, Harlan agreed, but it can be fair sometimes. If someone forces it. Lenora's shoulders shifted. You think you can force it? Harlan's gaze sharpened. I can try. Lenora gave a short, humorless laugh. That's what gets men killed. Harlan's mouth went hard. I've lived through worse. Lenora paused, brushed still, and stared at him. For a moment, Harlan felt like she saw past the fear talk, past the ranch, past the name Dre. She saw the boy he'd been, the man he'd become by refusing to die. She said quietly, That's what they mean, isn't it? What? Why they fear you? Harlan didn't answer. Lenora went back to brushing. The barn was quiet, except for the rasp of bristles and the slow breathing of animals. Finally, Lenora said, I didn't think a man like you would have a horse named Hawthorne. Harlan blinked, surprised she'd noticed. Why not? It sounds like a book. Harlan's mouth twitched, faint embarrassment. My mother liked books. The words slipped out before he could stop them. He rarely spoke of his mother. Lenora's eyes flicked to his face. You had a mother? Harlan's jaw tightened. Everyone does. Not everyone keeps her, Lenora said softly. The quiet grief in her voice hit him like a fist. Harlan pushed off the stall door, unable to stay still. He walked to the tack wall, busying his hands with straps that didn't need adjusting. You don't have to talk, he said. Lenora's voice came out small. If I don't talk, I disappear. Harlan froze. Lenora swallowed and kept brushing, like motion was the only thing keeping her from falling apart. I've disappeared before, she said. It's easy. You stop being a person, and you become space. Harlan turned slowly to look at her. She kept her eyes on Hawthorne. Harlan said, You're not space here? Lenora's throat moved. Don't promise what you can't keep. Harlan's voice went hard. I don't make promises I don't mean. Lenora finally looked at him. Her eyes were bright, not with tears, but with something like challenge. All right, she said. Then mean this. If Callahan comes, you let me go. You don't try to be a hero. Harlan's jaw clenched. I'm not a hero. Good, Lenora said. Then don't act like one. Harlan stared at her, and for a moment he didn't know whether to admire her or shake her. He said, If Callahan comes, you don't run out the back like a rabbit. Lenora's mouth tightened. I'm not a rabbit. No, Harlan agreed. You're a person. And people deserve to be seen. Lenora's fingers tightened on the brush. You think being seen helps? She asked. It helps when the right eyes are watching, Harlan said. Lenora's laugh was small and bitter. Right eyes don't live in town. Harlan's gaze sharpened. Some do. Lenora looked at him like she doubted that. Harlan didn't blame her. He doubted it too once. A ranch hand appeared at the barn entrance, hat in his hands. Boss, the man said. A rider's coming up the road? Harlan's body went still. What rider? The hand swallowed. Looks like town. Lenora's brush froze. Harlan's eyes went to her. Her face had gone pale beneath the bruise. Callahan? Harlan asked the hand. The hand shook his head, uncertain. Can't tell yet. Harlan's mind moved fast. If it was the sheriff, he couldn't hide her. Hiding would make her guilty. If it was anyone else, he needed to know why they were riding his land. He said, Ames. The hand nodded. Foreman's already moving. Harlan turned to Lenora. He kept his voice low. Go to the washroom. Lock the door. Wait. Lenora's chin lifted. You said not to hide me. I said not to hide you like you're a crime, Harlan replied. Right now, I don't know who's on my road. I'm not feeding you to the unknown. Lenora's throat moved. She looked like she wanted to argue, then thought better. She set the brush down carefully, like even in fear She refused to be careless. "All right," she said. She moved toward the barn exit, then paused. "Harlan," she said. He stiffened at his name on her mouth. "If it is him," she whispered, "don't let him smile at you." Then she was gone. Harlan stood in the barn, feeling the ranch tilt under him. He stepped outside, boots crunching on hard-packed earth, and watched the road. A rider crested the rise. Harlan's chest tightened. The horse was a familiar chestnut. The rider's posture was upright, confident, like a man who believed the world owed him answers. As the rider came closer, Harlan recognized the hat. Not Callahan's, Deputy Granger. Younger, leaner, eager to prove himself. The deputy slowed at the gate and tipped his hat as if they were friends. Harlan didn't move to meet him. He waited. Granger dismounted, boots hitting the ground with a practiced thud. He walked forward, hands open, smile easy. "Mornin', Mr. Dre," Granger called. Harlan's gaze stayed cold. "Deputy," Granger's smile held. "Sheriff asked me to ride out and have a word." Harlan's stomach tightened. "What word?" Granger glanced past Harlan toward the yard, as if counting buildings. "We got ourselves a little problem in town," Granger said lightly. "A girl went missing. You seen anyone pass through?" Harlan's mind snapped into focus. A girl went missing. Not a girl being hunted, a girl being framed. Granger's smile widened. "Sheriff says she's a thief. Took money." "Took," he shrugged. "You know how it is." Harlan's jaw clenched. Lenora's warning echoed. "Don't let him smile at you." Harlan said, "No one's passed through." Granger's eyes stayed friendly, but something sharpened behind them. "You sure?" Harlan didn't blink. "I'm sure." Granger took a step closer. Harlan didn't move. "You don't mind if I take a look around, do you?" Granger asked. It sounded polite. It was not a request. Harlan felt the ranch hands watching from a distance, the way men sense pressure. He thought of Lenora behind that locked door. He thought of the rope marks. He thought of Callahan's badge. Harlan's voice came out flat. "Yes, I mind." Granger's smile faltered for the first time. "Now, Mr. Dre," the deputy said, tone shifting, "you don't want to make this harder." Harlan stepped forward one pace. The air between them tightened. Harlan's voice stayed low. "You ride onto my land without a warrant and start demanding. That makes it hard all by itself." Granger's eyes narrowed. "You refusing lawful inquiry?" Harlan's jaw flexed. "I'm refusing you." Granger's gaze flicked toward the main house. Harlan saw it. The deputy was looking for movement, looking for a shadow, looking for Lenora. Harlan's hands remained loose at his sides. "Tell Callahan I said no." Granger's smile vanished. He leaned in slightly, voice dropping. "Sheriff's got patience. But he don't like being embarrassed." Harlan's voice went colder. "Then he should stop doing things that make him deserve it." Granger's eyes flashed. And then he did something small. He inhaled, like savoring a thought. "Funny thing," Granger said softly. "Sheriff said the girl's name is Lenora Quill." Harlan's blood turned to ice. Granger watched his face like he was watching a card trick. "You ain't seen her," Granger repeated, too casually. Harlan kept his expression blank. Years of practice. But inside, his mind roared. The deputy knew her name. They were already on his porch, metaphorically. He said, "Never heard it." Granger's smile returned thin now. "If you do, you let us know." Harlan didn't answer. Granger mounted his horse again, but he didn't ride off right away. He leaned down from the saddle and said, almost kindly, "Sheriff don't come himself unless he's sure." Then he nudged the horse and rode away. Harlan stood in the yard until the rider disappeared over the rise. Only then did he exhale. Ames appeared at his side, like he'd been there the whole time. "What did he want?" Ames asked. Harlan's voice came out hard. "They know her name." Ames cursed under his breath. Harlan stared at the road. Fear wasn't just a rumor now. It was a clock. He turned toward the house. He needed to talk to Lenora, not to pry, to plan, because the sheriff wasn't going to stop. And Harlan Dre had just realized something that made his stomach drop. Lenora hadn't come to his trough by accident. She'd come here on purpose. He opened the kitchen door and crossed to the washroom. He knocked once, gentle. "Lenora," he said. Silence. He waited. Finally, the latch clicked. The door opened a crack. Lenora's face appeared, pale and furious. "You lied," she hissed. Harlan's jaw tightened. "About what?" "You said you weren't watching," she snapped. "You watched the whole time. You watched him. You watched my door. You watched." Her voice broke for a second, then hardened again. "You watched like every other man watches." Harlan felt the accusation like a slap. He kept his voice steady. "I watch the road because it's my job to watch the road." Lenora's eyes flashed. "And I'm on that road now." Harlan's chest tightened. "Yes," he said softly. "You are," Lenora swallowed. "He knows my name." I heard. Her hands trembled on the doorframe. "What do I do?" The question was small. It wasn't pride now. It was survival. Harlan's stomach turned. He stepped back half a pace, giving her space. "We decide," he said. "Together." Lenora's eyes narrowed. "You keep saying that word like it's real." "It is," Harlan said. He looked at her, really looked. The girl who ate like she'd been forgotten. The girl with rope marks and a sharp tongue. The girl who'd walked onto his land like she'd chosen him. Harlan said, "Tell me what you saw." Lenora's mouth tightened. She shook her head once, then again, like the truth was too heavy. "I can't," she whispered. Harlan's jaw clenched. "Lenora," her eyes lifted, fierce. "If I tell you, they'll kill you." Harlan's breath caught. Lenora's voice shook, but her gaze held him. "They'll kill you, and they'll call it an accident, and no one will blink because it's you, the feared rancher. The man everybody says deserves it." The words hit him deep. Because she was right about the rumor, and wrong about what he deserved. Harlan swallowed the bitterness and said, "If they can kill me that easy, they were coming anyway." Lenora's throat moved. Harlan leaned slightly closer, not to crowd her, but to make sure she heard. "I'm already marked, Lenora. You're the one trying to survive." Lenora's eyes burned. "Then let me go," she said. Harlan's chest tightened. "Not yet," he said. Lenora's face twisted with anger and fear. "You don't get to decide," Harlan nodded. "You're right. You do." He stepped back and held out his hand, not grabbing, not forcing. "Come to the table," he said. "We talk. If you choose to leave, I'll put you on a horse with food and water, and you'll be gone before noon." Lenora stared at his hand like it was a risk. Then she slowly opened the door wider and stepped out. She didn't take his hand. Harlan didn't expect her to. They walked to the kitchen table and sat. The coffee had gone cold. Harlan didn't care. Lenora's fingers twisted together until her knuckles whitened. Harlan said, "Start with the simplest part." Lenora's voice came out thin. "The sheriff isn't who he says he is." Harlan's eyes narrowed. "He's a lawman." "He's a thief," Lenora whispered. Harlan's stomach dropped. Lenora's gaze snapped up. "Not the kind that steals bread. The kind that steals people. The kind that steals land." Harlan felt something cold move through him. "Lenora," he said carefully, "you need to be precise." Lenora swallowed hard. "I was working at the county office, cleaning, scrubbing floors. They don't notice you when you're holding a bucket." Harlan kept his face blank, but his mind was already building the picture. Lenora continued, voice tightening. "He came in late with two men, not deputies, men in good coats. They carried a satchel, heavy. They went into the records room." Harlan's jaw clenched. Lenora's hands trembled. "I was in the hallway. I shouldn't have been. But the floor needed mopping, and I heard them talking. Harlan didn't interrupt. Lenora's breath hitched. They were changing deeds, changing names, taking farms from people who couldn't read the papers. Harlan's stomach turned. He'd heard whispers of that. Men losing land because ink said so. Lenora's eyes glistened, furious. They laughed about it, like it was a game. Harlan's voice went rough. You have proof? Lenora nodded once, small. I took a page. Harlan's chest tightened. You took... I didn't mean to, Lenora snapped. I saw a name. A name I recognized. Harlan's blood cooled. What name? Lenora swallowed. Dre. Silence slammed into the room. Harlan stared at her. Lenora's eyes were wide, trembling with the weight of what she'd just admitted. They're coming for your land, she whispered. Harlan's heart beat once, hard. His own name on a stolen page. He thought of the deputy on his road. He thought of Callahan's smile. He thought of all the fences he'd built with hands that bled. Harlan's voice came out low, dangerous. Where is the page? Lenora's throat moved. I hid it. Where? Lenora's eyes flicked to the washroom. Harlan's stomach tightened. He stood abruptly. Lenora flinched. Harlan raised one hand. Stay here. He moved to the washroom, opened the door, and scanned the small room. Blanket on the cot, basin, soap, his spare shirt. Nothing obvious. Then he saw it. The mug of water he'd left by the door. Lenora had moved it. He stepped closer. Under the mug, tucked flat against the wood, was a folded piece of paper. Harlan's fingers hovered over it. He could feel the gravity of it like weight in his palm. He picked it up, unfolded it. Ink, official stamp, names, and there, clear as a brand, was his own, Harlan Dre. Beside it, in neat writing, a line that made his stomach drop. Transfer of title pending. He stared until the words blurred. Then he heard footsteps behind him. Lenora stood in the doorway, eyes wide. You see? She whispered. Harlan's voice came out like gravel. I see. Lenora's throat moved. That's why I came here. Harlan turned slowly, paper in his hand. You came here because of me, he said. Lenora's eyes flashed with something like defiance and shame. I came here because you re the only man in this county who might not fold. Harlan's chest tightened. He wanted to shout. He wanted to laugh. He wanted to crush Callahan's smile between his fists. Instead, he forced himself to breathe. Lenora, he said, voice steadying, you just made yourself the most dangerous person in this county. Lenora's lips trembled. I know. Harlan stared at the paper again. Then, from outside, a shout rose across the yard. Ames, Ryder! Harlan's blood chilled. He shoved the paper into his shirt and strode toward the kitchen. Ames burst in, hat half on, face tight. Boss, Ames said fast, Sheriff Callahan's coming. And he ain't alone. Lenora went pale, Harlan's jaw locked. He looked at Lenora. Then he looked at the window. He could already see dust rising on the road. Not one rider, several. Harlan's voice came out low, decisive. Lock the washroom. No matter what you hear. Lenora's eyes burned. Harlan. Harlan cut her off, not unkindly, but with steel. Do it. She swallowed hard, then nodded. As she moved, Harlan caught her wrist, not tight, not painful, just enough to stop her for 1 second. He met her eyes. You did right, he said. Lenora's throat moved. I don't feel right. You will, Harlan said. Then he let her go. Lenora ran to the washroom and slammed the door. The latch clicked. Harlan turned to Ames. How many? He asked. Ames's face was grim. 4, maybe 5. Harlan's blood ran cold. Sheriff Callahan didn't bring that many men for a conversation. He brought them for certainty. Harlan walked to the knife rack and took one down, not as a threat, but as a tool. A rancher's tool. He set it on the table and forced himself to keep breathing. Fear had kept trouble away for years. But now trouble was riding straight toward his door. And this time, fear might not be enough. This story took us a long time. If you like it, subscribe. Now, back to the story. Harlan's fingers stayed off the knife. He kept it on the table where it belonged, seen, not raised, while the sound of hooves thickened on the road like a promise turning sharp. Ames hovered near the window, moving like he wanted to be useful without making himself a target. Harlan didn't blame him. A man could do everything right and still end up as an example. Lenora was behind the washroom door. He didn't need to see her to know it. The house felt smaller with her hiding in it, like the walls had learned what fear sounded like and were holding it. A knock hit the front door hard enough to shake the frame. Harlan didn't answer from inside. He walked to it at a steady pace, opened it, and stepped out onto the porch, first taking the space before anyone else could claim it. Sheriff Callahan sat tall in his saddle, hat tipped back, smile already made. 4 men sat with him. 2 deputies Harlan recognized from town, and 2 strangers in clean coats that looked wrong on a ranch road. The strangers watched Harlan, the way men watched land they intended to own. Callahan's eyes slid over the porch, the yard, the barn line. He didn't look at the horizon. He looked at possession. "Morning, Mr. Dre," Callahan called, voice smooth enough to fool fools. "Sheriff," Harlan replied. Callahan's smile widened. "Heard you had company last night." Harlan kept his face still. "You heard wrong." "That so?" Callahan's gaze flicked toward the house behind Harlan. "Well, that's a relief. I'd hate to think you were the sort of man who hides thieves." Harlan felt the words reach for him, trying to hook into his reputation. He didn't give them a place to stick. "You didn't ride all this way to trade opinions." Callahan chuckled like they were old friends. "Straight to the point, then. A girl's missing from town. Lenora Quill." Harlan let the name pass over his face like wind over a rock. Inside, it hit like a hammer. He kept his voice flat. "Never heard of her." One of the strangers leaned slightly toward Callahan, whispering something. Callahan raised a hand without looking back, silencing him. His eyes stayed on Harlan, calm, predatory. "Funny," Callahan said. "Deputy Granger swore he smelled her on your porch. Said he'd bet his badge you fed her." Harlan didn't blink. "Granger should stop betting with his nose." Callahan's smile thinned. "Now, Harlan, don't make this into a performance. You and I both know how this county works. If she stepped onto your land, you do the decent thing and hand her over." Harlan's jaw tightened. "You got a warrant?" Callahan laughed, not even trying to hide the insult. "For a conversation?" "For a search," Harlan corrected. Callahan's eyes cooled. "I don't need a warrant to ask questions." "And I don't need to answer them," Harlan said. The deputies shifted, hands hovering near their belts like they were itching for permission. Harlan saw the hunger in small movements men who wanted to feel powerful because their own lives felt small. Callahan leaned forward in the saddle. "You refusing lawful authority, Dre?" Harlan's voice came out even. "I'm refusing you?" A shadow moved in the doorway behind Harlan, just the slightest tremble in light. He didn't turn. He didn't give the house away with a glance. He widened his stance instead, using his body as a wall. Callahan noticed anyway. His smile returned, quick and pleased. "Ah," he murmured, "there's that famous temper. Folks say you're a man who doesn't lose." Harlan kept his eyes on Callahan. "Folks say a lot. One thing folks don't say," Callahan went on, "is that you're soft. So I'm puzzled. Why would a feared rancher risk his name for a runaway?" The word runaway scraped something raw inside Harlan. Lenora hadn't run from work or duty. She'd run from a fist wearing a smile. Harlan didn't give Callahan that truth. He said, "You're done here." Callahan sighed dramatically, like Harlan was the one being difficult. Then he tilted his chin toward the strangers. Mr. Pike. One of the strangers dismounted with careful grace, boots barely touching dust. He adjusted his coat as if the air itself might dirty it. Wendell Pike, he announced, with the kind of voice that expected doors to open. Representing interests in county development, Harlan felt his stomach drop into a cold. Place, development, progress, improvement. Words men used when they wanted to steal something without sounding like thieves. Pike produced a folded document and held it up as if paper was authority. There are county records missing. Important ones. If the girl has them, we need them returned immediately. Harlan's eyes narrowed. So this isn't about a missing girl. Callahan's smile sharpened. It's about law. It's about paper, Harlan said. And you don't ride out with 2 city men for paper unless the paper can hang you. Pike's smile twitched, then hardened. Callahan's eyes darkened, but he kept his voice pleasant. Harlan, you've got land. You've got cattle. You've got a reputation that keeps men up at night. But you don't have friends in town. Not the kind that matter. Harlan felt the threat slide under the words. Callahan was offering him a simple world. Comply or be crushed. Callahan lifted his hand and snapped his fingers once. One deputy swung down from his horse and started toward the porch steps. Harlan moved 1 step, just one closing the distance like a gate slamming shut. The deputy stopped. His eyes flicked to Harlan's hands. Empty, but not harmless. Callahan's voice stayed mild. Let my man look around, Ray. No, Harlan said. Callahan's smile faded. You don't get to decide that. Harlan's voice dropped lower, rougher. On my land, I do. The deputy swallowed. He wasn't scared of a fight. He was scared of losing it and being remembered for it. Callahan leaned down, voice like oil meant only for Harlan. You keep pushing. I'll make your life small. I'll make your ranch smaller. I'll make your name a joke folks spit into their coffee. Harlan held his gaze. I'm still standing, Sheriff. Callahan stared for a beat, then straightened like he'd made a choice. His smile returned, but now it was thin and hungry. Fine, he said loudly. If you won't cooperate, I'll take her the hard way. Behind Harlan, something clicked. The washroom latch. Harlan's blood went cold. He didn't turn his head. He kept his eyes on Callahan and raised his voice. Ames! Ames appeared at the edge of the yard as if he'd been waiting for the call. Harlan didn't look at him either. He didn't want Callahan reading signals. Get the hands away from the house, Harlan ordered. Barnside. Ames understood. He moved fast. Callahan watched, amused. Getting shy, are we? Harlan's voice came out flat. I'm getting careful. And here I thought careful men didn't earn fear, Callahan said. The washroom door opened. Lenora stepped into the main room doorway and onto the porch behind Harlan. She held a folded paper in both hands, like it was a knife she didn't trust herself to use. Harlan's chest tightened so hard it hurt. Every instinct in him screamed to push her back, to hide her, to keep her safe by force if he had to. But he'd promised her choices. And she'd chosen this. Callahan's face brightened like a man spotting prey. There she is, he said, almost gentle. Lenora's chin was lifted, but her hands shook. She stared straight at Callahan, not at the deputies, not at the strangers. Like she'd decided the only way through fear was to look it in the eye. I'm not missing, she said, voice thin but clear. I ran. Callahan's smile widened. Of course you did. Thieves always run. Lenora's lips pressed together. You can call me what you want. I saw what you did. Pike's eyes sharpened. Callahan's smile faltered for a fraction, then returned. Did you now? Lenora unfolded the paper and held it up. Harlan saw Callahan's gaze snap to it fast, hungry, then wary, like a man seeing his own rope. You were in the records room, Lenora said. You and him. She tipped her chin toward Pike. You were changing deeds. Callahan laughed softly. Girl, You don't know what you're talking about. I know what I read, Lenora said. Can you read? Pike asked, a sneer hiding behind polite words. Lenora's eyes flashed. Enough. Callahan's voice turned sharp. Give me that paper. Lenora's fingers tightened. Touch me and I'll tear it. The air tightened. Even the horses shifted in place. Callahan froze. That was the first honest thing he'd done since he arrived. Harlan felt it in his gut. The paper mattered more to Callahan than Lenora's body. That truth made Harlan's hands curl into fists at his sides. Callahan's eyes narrowed at Lenora. You stole county property. Lenora's voice shook, but she didn't lower the paper. I stole the truth. Callahan's smile vanished. You're coming with me? Harlan stepped sideways, putting himself between Lenora and the sheriff without touching her, without claiming her, just blocking the path. No, Harlan said. Callahan's gaze locked on him. Move. Harlan didn't. No one touches her. Callahan's mouth twitched. You're making a mistake. I made my choice, Harlan said, and surprised himself with how true it was. One deputy started to circle wide, trying to come in behind Lenora. Harlan's head turned just enough to catch it. He lifted his voice without raising it. Stop, the deputy halted. Callahan's eyes flashed. Deputy, the deputy swallowed. His gaze flicked over the yard where ranch hands had paused in their work. Men were watching now. Not enough to save anyone from a quiet beating later, but enough to make today complicated. Callahan hated complicated. Pike stepped forward, hands open like he was offering reason. Mr. Dre, you're a practical man. The county's changing. Land will be consolidated. Titles will be clarified. It's inevitable. Harlan's eyes narrowed. Clarified, he repeated. That what you call stealing farms from people who can't fight paper? Pike's smile tightened. That's a childish view. Lenora's voice snapped. His name is on it. Callahan's gaze cut to her. What? Lenora held the paper higher. Harlan Dre. Transfer of title pending. Silence hit like a gunshot. Harlan felt the words settle in his chest like a stone. He'd seen it himself before dawn, but hearing it out loud spoken, where men could hear, made it real in a way ink alone hadn't. Callahan's eyes went flat. That's a forged page. Lenora laughed once bitter. Then why do you want it so badly? Callahan's jaw flexed. He turned his head slightly toward Pike. Pike's hand twitched near his coat pocket. Harlan watched Pike's fingers and felt something cold. Men like Pike didn't solve problems with fists first. They solved them by removing proof. A match scraped. Pike struck it, flame blooming small and bright in his hand. Lenora's breath caught. Harlan moved without thinking. He grabbed the coffee pot from the porch, rail cold, left over, and threw the last of it in a hard arc. The flame died with a hiss. Pike recoiled, cursing, shaking wet fingers. Callahan's face twisted with rage. You just assaulted a county representative. He lit a match on my porch, Harlan said. Try again and I'll do worse. Callahan's eyes went dead. That was the face of a man who decided he didn't need to pretend. Then a voice cut in from the yard, sharp and familiar. Sheriff? Mrs. Polk stepped into view, wide-shouldered and steady, a cast-iron skillet hanging at her side like a promise. 2 ranch hands were with her, not close enough to start a fight, close enough to be seen. Callahan's expression shifted, annoyed. Mrs. Polk, this doesn't concern you. Mrs. Polk's eyes flicked from Callahan to Lenora, taking in the bruised cheek, the shaking hands, the paper held like a lifeline. Her mouth hardened. It concerns me when you ride onto this ranch with city rats and start barking, she said. One deputy made a sound that might have been a laugh if fear hadn't swallowed it. Callahan's voice sharpened. Watch your tone. Mrs. Polk lifted her chin. Watch your men. Lenora's throat tightened at the way Mrs. Polk didn't ask permission to be angry on her behalf. It was strange, almost painful, to feel defended without having to earn it. Mrs. Polk stepped closer to Lenora, not grabbing, just joining her space. "Let me see," she said. Lenora hesitated. Trust was a muscle that hurt to use. Harlan spoke softly, not to push, just to steady. "She's not giving it up." "I ain't him," Mrs. Polk snapped, then softened by a hair. "I can read stamps. I can read names. Let me be another set of eyes." Lenora lowered the paper, just enough for Mrs. Polk to see, without letting go. Mrs. Polk squinted, lips moving. Then her mouth went tight. "That's a real county stamp," Mrs. Polk said. Callahan scoffed. "You can't read legal." "I can read robbery," Mrs. Polk cut in. "And I can read the word pending." A murmur ran through the ranch hands, not loud, but alive. Callahan felt it. His gaze snapped across them, measuring. He raised his voice, trying to regain the room. "Harboring a fugitive is a crime. Interfering with county business is a crime. Any man here wants to keep his job. He steps away from this now." The threat landed, but it didn't scatter them the way Callahan expected. The men hesitated, eyes on Harlan, eyes on Mrs. Polk, eyes on Lenora. Hesitation was the start of a change. Callahan hated change he didn't control. He leaned down toward Lenora, voice turning falsely kind. "Girl, give me the paper and I'll let you vanish. No jail. No chase. You can slip out of town and no one will look twice." Lenora's stomach rolled. That offer was everything her fear had begged for, and everything her pride had refused. Harlan didn't speak. He didn't tell her what to do. He just stood there, steady, letting her choice belong to her. Lenora lifted her chin. "I don't want to vanish," she said. Callahan's smile twitched. "You don't know what you want." "I want you to stop," Lenora said, voice stronger now. "I want you to stop stealing people's land and calling it law." Callahan's eyes narrowed to slits. "Enough." He swung down from his horse, boots hitting the ground with finality. He took 2 steps forward. Harlan matched him with 1 step, still blocking. Callahan stopped close enough that Harlan could smell tobacco and arrogance. "This is where you lose, Dre," Callahan murmured. "You think fear belongs to you. But fear belongs to whoever holds the badge." Harlan's voice came out like gravel. "Badges don't scare me. Men do." Callahan's nostrils flared. Then he did what men like him always did, when words weren't enough. He planned to come back with more power. He straightened and snapped at a deputy. "Ride to town. Get the judge. Get a warrant." The deputy hesitated just a heartbeat. Callahan's eyes burned. "Now!" The deputy turned his horse. Lenora's throat tightened. "He'll come back," she whispered, more to herself than anyone. Harlan's gaze stayed hard. "Yes. And then what?" Lenora asked. Harlan's jaw flexed. "Then we don't let him be the only one with paper." Lenora swallowed. The world had always been men with paper and men with fists. She'd survived by slipping between them. Now Harlan was talking about standing. She tightened her grip on the page. "There's more," she said suddenly. Callahan's head snapped toward her. "What?" Lenora's heart hammered, but she forced the words out. "The clerk keeps carbon copies. In a lockbox. Under the floorboard by the records desk." Pike's face changed too quick. Callahan saw it too. "You little—" Callahan started, fury rising. Lenora's voice shook, but didn't stop. "Clerk Hollis. He keeps them like insurance." Callahan's eyes went cold. "Hollis," he repeated, tasting the name like something he wanted to break. Harlan's mind moved fast. If Hollis had copies, then proof wasn't just a single page Callahan could burn. Harlan turned his head slightly. Ames appeared from the barn side, already moving. Harlan spoke fast, low. "Ride to Hollis. Now, bring him here with whatever he's got." Callahan barked. "Stop him." Deputy Granger shifted like he might obey. Then he looked at the porch, at Mrs. Polk's skillet, at the ranch hands watching, at Harlan, standing like a wall. Granger didn't move. Callahan's eyes flashed with rage at his own man's hesitation. He swallowed it, forced calm back onto his face. He mounted again, stiff with anger. "This isn't over," he said, loud enough for everyone. "Not for you, Dre. Not for the girl. Not for any man who thinks a ranch is a kingdom." Harlan didn't blink. "Ride on, Sheriff." Callahan's smile returned, brittle. "Oh, I will." He turned his horse and rode out with Pike and the others, dust rising behind them like a threat. When they were far enough that the sound of hooves softened, Lenora's knees threatened to give. She stayed standing anyway. She wouldn't collapse where Callahan's shadow could still reach her. Mrs. Polk nudged her toward the porch. "Inside," she said. "You're shaking," Lenora tried to protest. The words wouldn't come. Harlan kept his voice steady. "Inside?" he echoed. "Please." That single word "please" hit Lenora harder than any shout. She went. In the kitchen, the coffee smelled cold and real. Mrs. Polk poured Lenora a mug and shoved it into her hands. "Drink." Lenora drank. Bitter, grounding. Harlan sat across from her, forearms on the table again open, visible. "You did right," he said quietly. Lenora swallowed. "It doesn't feel right. Courage rarely does," Mrs. Polk muttered. Lenora stared at the paper. "He's going to kill me." Harlan's gaze didn't soften into lies. "He'll try." The honesty made Lenora's chest tighten. She'd lived around men who promised safety like it was free. Harlan didn't promise. He planned. Harlan spoke carefully. "When Ames returns with Hollis's copies, we take them somewhere Callahan can't smother them." "Where?" Lenora asked. "Fort Ellery," Harlan said. "Railroad agent. Federal contracts. Men who hate county games because games slow money." Lenora's stomach rolled. "He'll chase." "Yes," Harlan said. "And if we stay, he'll come harder." Mrs. Polk snorted. "He already came hard." Silence settled, heavy with the shape of the road ahead. Then hoofbeats returned fast, urgent. Harlan rose instantly and moved to the window. Ames rode into the yard hard, horse lathered. Another rider followed small, hunched, terrified, clutching something tight to his chest. Clerk Hollis. Harlan opened the door before they reached the porch. Hollis stumbled forward, eyes wild. "He'll kill me," he whispered. "Not if you stand where folks can see you," Harlan said. Hollis swallowed. His hands shook as he held up a small metal box. "This is all I got," he said. "I kept it because I didn't know which way the wind," Mrs. Polk snapped. "Hush and sit." Hollis sat at the table like his bones might melt. Lenora leaned forward, eyes locked on the box. "Open it," she said. Hollis's mouth trembled. "Sheriff said if I ever—" Harlan's voice cut through, low and final. "Open it." Hollis fumbled with a key. The lock clicked. The lid lifted. Inside were folded sheets carbon copies, stamped, signed, neat as a lie. Harlan pulled one out and read. Then another. Then his hands went still. Lenora watched his face change. She didn't need to read to know what it meant. "How many?" she whispered. Harlan's voice came out rough. "Too many." He spread the papers across the table. Names Lenora recognized from town old men who limped, widows who sold eggs, families who'd been on their land longer than Callahan had been alive. All marked for transfer. Lenora's breath caught, anger rising so hot it shook her. "He's stealing the whole county." Hollis's voice cracked. "He said it was progress." Mrs. Polk's eyes hardened into something dangerous. "Progress don't need a sheriff with a match." A shout rose outside sharp. A ranch hand burst into the doorway. "Boss!" "Riders!" Harlan's spine went rigid. Ames swore under his breath. Callahan turned around. He said, "He's coming back." And he brought more. Lenora's heart slammed so hard she tasted metal. Harlan didn't waste a second on panic. He gathered the papers into a tight stack and shoved them into a flour sack, tying it like it was feed for survival. He handed the sack to Lenora. It was heavy in her arms, not just paper. Proof, weight, responsibility. Lenora's fingers clenched. What do we do? Harlan's eyes held hers. We move. Hollis stared, horrified. Move where? Fort Ellery, Harlan said. Mrs. Polk set her skillet down like a decision. I'm coming. Harlan shook his head. No, you're staying. You keep this ranch steady. You keep the hands from panicking. You keep eyes watching. Mrs. Polk's mouth tightened, furious at being left behind. Then she looked at Lenora and Hollis, two trembling people who had finally stopped hiding. Mrs. Polk's voice softened by a hair. Fine, she snapped. But you listen, girl. Lenora looked at her. Mrs. Polk shoved a small tin into Lenora's free hand. Salt. And a needle. You get ripped open, you sew it shut. You hear me? Lenora's throat tightened. Yes. Harlan turned to Ames. Saddle Hawthorne. Saddle yours? Now. Ames was already running. Outside, Callahan's voice rang across the yard, loud and furious. Harlan Dre, open your door. Harlan didn't answer him. He grabbed dried meat, canteens, biscuits fast, practical, and shoved them into another sack. He handed it to Hollis. Hollis stared at it like it was a sentence. I can't ride, he whispered. You can, Harlan said. Or you can wait here for a sheriff who knows your name. Hollis swallowed hard. Fear moved him better than pride ever had. He nodded. Lenora stood, flour sack hugged to her chest. Her knees wanted to fold. She forced them straight. Harlan met her eyes. His voice dropped low so only she could hear. If we get separated, you don't stop. You ride. Lenora's throat tightened. And you? Harlan's jaw flexed. I'll be loud enough for you to live. I don't want you loud, Lenora whispered. I want you alive. Something flickered in Harlan's eyes pain. Maybe, or a promise he wouldn't speak. Then ride fast, he said. Ames shouted from the yard. They're ready. Harlan moved them out the back, behind the barn line, cutting along the fence where the land dipped and the house couldn't see. No hero speeches, no prayers, just motion. Lenora swung into the saddle with hands that shook. The sack bumped against her ribs like a second heart. Hollis climbed onto Ames's spare, like a man climbing into a storm. Harlan mounted Hawthorne, posture steady, as if he'd done this 100 times and wasn't scared at all. But Lenora could see it in the tightness of his jaw. He was scared, not of Callahan, of failing. Callahan's shout rose again, closer now, angry enough to bruise the air. Boots pounded somewhere near the front door. Lenora's pulse spiked. Harlan lifted a hand. Now. They pushed off, hooves thudding hard-packed earth. As they cleared the far fence line, a gunshot cracked behind them high, not aimed, just a warning meant to crawl into Lenora's spine. Lenora didn't flinch. She rode harder. The ranch fell behind them, shrinking into distance, but the weight in her arms stayed real. For the first time in her life, she wasn't running empty-handed. She was running with proof, with witnesses, with a choice she'd made out loud. Harlan leaned toward her as the road opened. Ready? Lenora tightened her grip on the sack and lifted her chin. No, she said honestly. But I'm going anyway. Harlan's mouth twitched, something like fierce approval. Good. Behind them, the sound of hooves began to rise again, faint at first, then growing. Callahan wasn't staying on that porch. He was coming. 2 more great stories are next. Don't miss them. Subscribe and turn on notifications.